Hey everybody, another podcast. It's me, John Thomas Hill, and we're here talking about Trump. We have a lot to talk about because we've got the president being investigated for possible impeachment by the House. But according to one article on CNN, Donald Trump now has an obvious path to a second term. As I try to bring that up, it's not going to come up, so I'm just going to worry about it. Okay, here's the thing about that. All right, I hear that every so often. Are you going to cover more Trump? Yeah, I'm going to cover more Trump. Because, I like doing that because I like telling people why I think that they need to understand that the guy that they voted for in 2016 ain't exactly who they think he is. And it's not to put down the Trump voters. And it's easy to put down Trump voters and all this and things like that and blah, 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 But as for Trump having an easy path in 2020, no. Here's why I say it will not happen that way. Okay? The states that really helped Trump go over the top in 2016, whether or not they came because of Russian help, remains to be seen entirely. I think there's a case for it, but that's not exactly where I want to go with this. Here's the thing. Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, Pennsylvania, those four states went from being blue states in the 2008 and 12 presidential elections to being red states for Trump in 2016. The last I checked, polls indicated that Donald Trump trailed significantly in all four of those states. Now, why does it matter? Because if all four of those states flop from Trump to whoever the Democratic nominee is, then Trump is done. Those four states. Remember, California and New York are the two big Democratic states. I doubt very seriously that Trump will challenge whoever the candidate is in either state. New York's very solidly Democratic, even though mostly it's New York City who's Democratic. And most of upstate New York is mostly Republican. It is what it is. California, obviously, we all know, LA, San Francisco, the bigger cities are Democratic, whereas the rural areas in California are Republican. Texas and Florida. Texas will probably break for Trump again, although I think it will be close enough to where he's scared about it. Florida will be a key, as it always is. It'll be the 20th anniversary of the infamous Florida election, which, if you have ever listened to my podcast, you'll know that you would assume, I think, well, Gore got robbed. Wrong. Yeah, there were a lot of mistakes made. The procedures were bad. But Gore lost the election long before Florida came along. And I can go that into one other podcast down the road. But here's the thing. All right. As it stands right now, I think last poll I saw, Trump had a 2-point lead in Florida. And that's pretty good. Usually, if you're going to win the state, you have to, against an incumbent, you've got to beat him by 7 points. So the Democrats have some work to do. But here's the thing. it's not the usual suspects when it comes to how you win in Florida. Because it used to be how you win in Florida is how strong you opposed Cuba. But the generation that hated Castro a lot is dying out. The younger generation wants more peaceful relations with Cuba, more interaction with Cuba, a chance to actually go to the island with little or next to no interference. And the Castros are dead. There's a new leader. He may very well be more towards, if we get a president in there that doesn't want to stick to the same old tired, boring, ineffective policy of we've got to keep this embargo going, we've got to be tough against Cuba. Look, if we're so-called being tough against Cuba worked, the communist regime would have fallen decades ago. It hasn't. The rest of the world has interacted with Cuba. We might as well just go ahead and admit, you know what? The embargo no longer works. I'm not saying Cuba won the battle. I'm just saying that, hey, if it's not going to work, why keep doing it? But I'm getting sidetracked. My apology. So do I think Trump can win next year? He can. A lot can happen in a year. The impeachment can go badly. I don't think it will. I think how it will play out is that he will be impeached. Whether or not he is convicted depends on what the impeachment hearing finds and what. Here's how it goes. If there is no major gigantic revelation that Donald Trump colluded with the Russians to influence the 2016 election, the vast majority of Republicans will vote not to convict, and Trump will stay in office. But, and this is the big but, what will people think about that? The Republicans are the law and order party. 21 years ago, they went after a president for lying about an affair he had in the Oval Office. The Democrats were in lockstep. The main reason for that was because the Republicans made the mistake of making it about sex. Now, can the Democrats expect to have the same problem this time around? Whereas you may see the Republicans stay in lockstep because they feel like it's revenge for what happened with Bill Clinton. Well, here's the thing. What Bill Clinton did was bad enough. Lied under oath, which should have been the crux of the case. They should have focused less about, he had sex with another woman while he was married, to he sat in a chair at court, on the witness stand, I should say, was placed under oath, and lied under oath. In a situation where he didn't have to lie. It was not like this was the first time that Bill Clinton had ever been accused of cheating on his wife. Nor was it like the 10th, I think. But this was something he could have admitted to. It would have been embarrassing. The Republicans almost certainly would have censured him. I doubt very seriously they would have gotten anywhere with impeachment about having an affair, because if they did that, you'd have to impeach half the damn Congress. And probably even more than that. But I'm not saying impeach, I mean remove Congress. Hang on just a second. Let me pause this for just a second. All right, sorry about that. We had a situation where my sister's voicemail kicked in, so I had to go to a little bit of break. I don't have any songs on this thing yet, so yeah, you'll have to excuse me for that. That'll be soon. Anyhow, let's talk about why I think Trump needs to be impeached. Where do we begin? We can start with the emoluments, the fact that he's profiteering off his office, which is against the law in the very Constitution itself. There is obviously the interactions with Russia concerning the election, before the election and then afterward. Here's the thing. There are a lot of people who are Trump supporters who are blinding themselves to the reality that the man they support is not who they think he is. They want him to be the American savior. They want him to be almost messianic. I've watched some of these rallies and they're truly frightening. Usually political rallies for presidents and presidential candidates are, the crowds are into it. You have a few hecklers and nothing of huge circumstance takes place. It's basically a pep rally. It's pretty much what it is. The difference between those and what we see with Trump is Trump wants to rile people up. The vast majority of political rallies are to basically pump up the base, to get people excited about the campaign, to talk about, knocking the opponent a little bit, which is usually common for any political campaign. There's a big difference between that with Trump. It's not about the Democrats, it's about the other. And Trump is the first president that I fully believe is trying to divide this country. There is a difference between presidents whose policies are divisive, and there's a big difference between that and a president who's intentionally dividing the country because it benefits him. And the reason I say that is, throughout this country's history, rich white people have pretty much been in charge. We are a democracy, but truthfully, for pretty much the entire existence of this country, rich white folks have been in charge. Then 11 years ago, a man by the name of Barack Obama got elected president. And that scared the hell out of a lot of folks who are used to rich, white, powerful men being in charge of the country. Now, I thought at the time, this is just a fad. They'll vent their spleen and they'll grudgingly become accepting of the fact that this is the 21st century and that black men can be president, white women can be president, black women can be president, Hispanic men can be president, Hispanic women can be president, and so on and so forth, and whatever. Well, we got a proof of that in 2016 when Hillary Clinton won the Democratic nomination. Not that I'm a huge fan of Hillary Clinton. I'll be the first to admit she's got enough baggage to overwhelm a landfill. But she's better than Trump. She was better than Trump. She still is better than Trump. Why? Because she's corrupt. But she's corrupt in the way that keeps the country stable. Keeps the country from being underwhelmed, or undermined, I should say, by our enemies. Let me ask you this, for those of you who are on the quote-unquote Trump train. If the president is truly innocent, why has he got people who he claims and they claim to have the evidence to exonerate him? Why is he saying they can't testify? If these people can prove him innocent, why is he not wanting them to testify? It's a political game. Impeachment, in its very essence, is a political game. We all know this. 21 years ago, it was a political game. Pretty much went down party lines. Democrats voted against impeachment. Republicans voted for impeachment. You had a few conscientious Democrats who probably voted for impeachment. You had, I think, maybe a small handful of Republicans who voted against it because they were tired of the political games. But generally, the impeachment went through. Of course, he didn't get convicted. Republicans didn't have the numbers in the Senate. But here's the big difference between that and now. Back then, you had moderate Republicans and moderate Democrats who could work on things. Not so much the case anymore. The Republicans have done a great job, and I'm saying that sarcastically, of ridding their party of moderates. There are surely some moderate Republicans out there. They're just not running for political office or being active in the party. Why do I say that? Well, for starters, the main reason I say it is because there are people in the Republican Party who have wanted for a very long time to basically turn America into a conservative utopia. Not for your benefit or for my benefit, for their own benefit. Now, why do I say this? Why am I so against this idea of a conservative utopia? Well, the main reason I'm against it is because we're not meant to be a conservative utopia. We're not meant to be a liberal utopia. We are meant to be a melting pot of different peoples. Excuse me. Now, why do I say that? I mean, it basically is what it is. For the longest time, we have had a nation that is pretty much been a melting pot, mostly from Europe. But obviously, we have had folks from other countries as well. Most of our influence is obviously European, but we also have Asian influence, Hispanic influence, But here's the crazy thing. Recently, the Trump people, the MAGA heads as I like to call them, have decided to try and bring us back to the WASP era of America. They want to basically turn America back into what it was probably about 100 years ago. Here's the problem with that. You can't do it. Demographics are against you. Oh, but they're doing it. No. What are you going to do? Deport legal citizens? Take away illegal immigration for a moment. And there's a problem. a problem that can be fixed. Hispanic people are having more children every single day. African Americans having more children every single day. Asians, Arabs, / Muslims. In America, Caucasian people are not having enough children to keep up with the death rate. So that scares certain people in power that are white. Why do I say this? Because, well, I'm white. If you happen to know me, you know I'm white. And I'm part 1/16th Cherokee. Now, I'm not saying I'm embracing my Cherokee heritage. I only know it's a great-grandma, great-grandma, or something like that, great-grandma, or something like that, that is full-blooded Cherokee. I don't claim to have any knowledge of my Cherokee ancestors, anything like that. I'm not making any claims for being, Native American, but it's made me aware that minorities have always been basically treated like crap here. Whether you be black, female, or of a different religion or religious group or whatever. It's always been white men, specifically rich white men, on top. What happened in this election was the reassertion of rich white men trying to take back the country from what they perceive as people who are trying to tear down the very thing they believe they created, which they didn't entirely. But for them, they firmly believe that this country belongs to them and them alone. And that is why if you look at the supporters of the Republican Party, I'm talking about the big-time financial supporters, it's a very interesting bunch of people. Take the Koch brothers. One of them is no longer with us. But for 40 years, along with their associates, they have been trying to undermine the very idea of American government. You've heard Reagan say in the past, government is the problem, not the solution to a problem, or something like that. The thing is, that was planted in his speech, not by him, but by people who supported him financially, because they viewed government as a problem to their interest, not necessarily yours, not necessarily mine, their own interest. The reason I say that is because if you look at the way the Republicans were before the election of 1978, when a man by the name of Newt Gingrich began to rally his Republicans who had been taking it on the chin for election after election to Congress. The Democrats had ruled Congress for over 2 decades by then. They seemingly had a firm grip on the place. Newt Gingrich was like, got to change this. And he did. And 16 years later, he got his dream and desire. He became Speaker of the House. When the Democrats basically screwed their own pony, so to speak. They had the House banking scandal and their huge 4-decade power stranglehold on the House ended. Now, you would think, well, the Republicans are going to try and make things better. Wrong. They decided they wanted to take vengeance upon the Democrats for being in power for too long. Well, they lasted for a dozen years, and then 2006, the Republicans were tossed out on their ear because George W. Bush fought a war we should never have fought and botched a hurricane relief effort to the point where it made a lot of people wonder what the hell he's doing. And then, of course, there's the fact that there were these signs of a growing economic downturn, which of course happened 2 years later, which of course brought us to Barack Obama, which of course brings us to the backlash against Barack Obama, which led, of course, 8 years later to the election of Donald Trump. Here's the thing. Donald Trump isn't so much the problem as it is the people in high places who support him. They don't care if it's Donald Trump as president. They don't care if it had been Mitt Romney or Paul Ryan or whoever else. As long as it was someone that would listen to them, someone that would listen to their agenda, which is the rich don't pay taxes, or very little. Corporations pay little to no taxes and get all these tax breaks and have hardly any regulation on them. Because if you go against that, we'll screw the economy. We'll close up a lot of plants. We'll fire a lot of people. Lay them off. Why? Because of globalization. And here's the problem. Here's the problem, ladies and gentlemen. Trump's a nationalist in a party that has been very much about globalization. Now you're saying, well, Clinton supported NAFTA. There are plenty of Democrats who support NAFTA. Plenty of Republicans who support NAFTA. NAFTA began under Reagan and later Bush Sr. That's why it's more Republican than it is Democratic. Not saying I'm not afraid to throw the Democrats under the bus as well. Not all Democrats were for that. Not all Republicans were for that. You remember H. Ross Perot, who recently passed away? Well, Donald Trump at one point was against it as well. And supposedly, he's trying to make things fairer for us. But the problem is, the world's changed a lot. We are more interconnected. Trade deals mean a hell of a lot more now than they did. You just simply can't get out of a trade deal without the implications and the ramifications of that being very scary indeed, especially when you're talking about China. Recently, the president signed into law a bill basically saying that the United States government is sympathizing towards the Hong Kong protesters. I'm sure you've heard about this. In Hong Kong, the Hong Kong protesters are protesting the harsh treatment they feel that Hong Kong's getting from the Chinese government. Well, a conventional president would walk a fine line, regardless if it's Democrat or Republican. They would be pressing China for human rights, but they would not necessarily side with the Hong Kong protesters. Why? Because business. Okay? A lot of business in China. Guess what happened the other day when we passed this bill? China basically said, well, U.S. military ships can no longer stop at Hong Kong for shore leave. Well, that hurts Hong Kong. Not a huge amount, but there are a lot of U.S. ships in the Pacific. Sometimes they stop at Hong Kong. If our military isn't welcome, then what's next? Are we going to see, I don't know, U.S. tourism no longer welcome in Hong Kong? Maybe it's harder to go to Hong Kong. Maybe it becomes tougher to do business in Hong Kong because Beijing doesn't want you to do business with Hong Kong. That's something we need to remember, ladies and gentlemen. Trump is stepping on a lot of toes. You may like it. You may think he's being tough and strong. No, he's not. Because this benefits China. If you're doing things to make yourself look strong, but in reality what you're doing is you're strengthening your opponent. And all the analysts, both Republican and Democrat, who have knowledge about China, are saying that, yeah, it's not entirely smart what Trump's doing. Why is Trump so anti-China? But he's so pro-Russia. But yet Russia and China have a strong alliance. Here is the conclusion of this talk. Divide and conquer. Do you know what President Vladimir Putin was before he became president of Russia? He was a KGB agent during the Cold War. And then the Soviet Union fell apart and collapsed. And now we're left with Russia and the remnants of the other Soviet republics becoming independent nations. For men like Putin, it was humiliating, embarrassment. He looks at this country like his compatriots looked at us 40 years ago, as a bitter enemy. He wants to undermine us. Now he has the technology to do so. Russia's not about communism anymore. It's purely about Putin and what he wants. He has plenty of rich friends. Russia's got plenty of capitalism these days. It's now about pure, unadulterated Russian greatness. They want, and Vladimir Putin specifically wants, Russia to be great again. How does he accomplish that? Undermining the United States, his bitter enemy. Undermining Europe and the United Kingdom. It's interesting to note that there isn't definitive proof that Russia helped Trump win the election. You're asking, why is that important? If it didn't help him win the election, does it matter? Yes, it does. It means Russia interfered to create havoc. Just because their interference may not have helped him actually win the election does not mean that if he knew about it and his associates knew about it, that Russia did what they wanted to do. And that was sow chaos. And Trump thinks that that helped him win the election. It doesn't matter if it didn't help him, because what happened was Russia messed with their election, and they knew about it, and they did nothing to prevent that. And now signs are pointing to the fact that they want to interfere again in the election. And Trump is acting like, I'm fine with it. Well, I'm not. Over the course of the next year, you're going to hear me talk about Trump. The impeachment hearings, we're going to probably get a vote sometime next couple of weeks, I'm sure, before Christmas. Things are coming to a head. I don't take any pleasure out of this. I thought when he was elected, he'll mellow out. He'll, basically do what the Republicans in Congress tell him about. Follow along their lead. I was wrong about that. And so were the Republicans in Congress. The next time we talk about Trump, we're going to talk about, is he actually a racist, or is he just playing to a certain political audience? But that's it for now. Good night, good luck, and may the good news be yours.